Hello, 7th graders. It's Mrs. Weiland here. I wanted to have a chance to explain your assignment that you're being given today about Alfred Wegener's hypothesis and his idea of continental drift. So I want you to think of this as a choice assignment. I'm going to explain the different options that you have and how you could show your understanding of what you've been learning in class about Wegener and what his new idea was on continental drift. So the goal of the project, or I shouldn't even call it a project, I guess more of an assignment, is to demonstrate your knowledge of Wegener's hypothesis of continental drift. Now you're going to do that with 3 things in mind. You should be able to summarize the main idea of what continental drift is all about. You need to be able to explain in detail all 3 categories of evidence that he used to support his hypothesis, and be able to explain why other scientists at the time did not believe him. So you've got some choices of products that you might create to show this learning. The one I'm going to spend the most time explaining is the persuasive paper, but by no means do you need to choose that. I'm going to explain what's required in regards with the paper, but really everything, all the content that's required, you can apply it in any other type of product. So I'm going to come back to the slide. Let's say you choose to write a paper, and it would be a persuasive paper. So you're trying to convince others about the idea of continental drift. And to write the paper, I want you to pretend you're Alfred Wegener himself, and you're trying to convince other scientists of the time of your new idea. So to get started in your paper, paragraph 1 up here, what you would put in that paragraph would be an explanation of just the general idea of your theory of continental drift. So maybe you include things like what Pangea is and how many millions of years ago you, pretending to be Alfred Wegener, think the continents were together. And just a basic explanation, introduction to what this idea is about. But then later in the body of your paper, so paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, will be used to explain the evidence. So each paragraph would be a place to explain in detail all the 3 categories. So to remind you, the 3 categories of evidence are the shape of the land masses, the fossil evidence, and climate evidence. And under the climate evidence, you could talk about and should talk about glacial scratches being found in unique areas of the world that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it did to Alfred Wegener. You could talk about coal deposits. And so each paragraph should be devoted to one of the categories, so you should separate those out. And then the closing paragraph, paragraph 5, will explain why other scientists didn't really believe you. And again, you're pretending to be Alfred Wegener. What could you not explain in your hypothesis? Okay, so even if you choose not to do a paper, you could still show understanding of the general idea of continental drift, show understanding of the 3 pieces of evidence, and somehow incorporate why other scientists did not believe you. And so some options is maybe you write a speech pretending to be Alfred Wegener, and what do you think he would say if he were to present his findings to other scientists, which could include, and actually I just thought of this off the top of my head right now, you could do a skit where you could honestly be Alfred Wegener, perform it in front of the class, and pretend to be presenting your idea to others. So you could do a speech or a skit. Perhaps you write a graphic novel. If you like to draw, you could do that, having different characters and including Alfred Wegener's idea. Maybe you write a children's book and illustrate it. Those of you that like to build and actually create like very physical, tangible things, maybe you make some kind of a diorama where you're building something. Again, this is where you'd have to be creative, but building something to show your knowledge of continental drift. Maybe it's an informational pamphlet, a board game, writing a song, or maybe if you really like to write, but you want to be a bit more creative in the writing, you could pretend to be Alfred Wegener and write various journal entries showing your new idea and kind of walking through day to day as you're discovering these new pieces of evidence, and you can almost keep like a personal journal. So these are all different ideas. Things that I will not be accepting for a product is a basic PowerPoint, a Prezi, a Powtoon. I'm really looking for things that show off your creativity, but also your science knowledge. And just doing a PowerPoint and those other items really don't ask you to use any kind of creative thinking and critical thinking as well. So those will not be allowed. Now I do want to show you this. So on page 9 of your packet, there is a rubric here. And even though the rubric is written with the essay or the paper in mind, you can still use this to help guide you with no matter what kind of project you do. So at somewhere in your project, you would need to explain how fossils provide evidence of continental drift. And in order to get all the points, you will want to be in this vertical column right here. So you're going to want to read over that. If you look at the top, and I know it's small, but it says what to look for if you have like a minus. So these would be things you would do or not do, I guess, over here. So you want to stay in the plus column to try to earn all the possible points. So everyone has this on page 9, where you should all be using the rubric. This is information on page 8 of your packet. And like I said, though, you don't have to do a paper. There's lots of other options. So your substitute teacher will inform you of the due date. And I'm going to be out one more day from class. So be working hard, and I'll see you when I get back at the end of the week and kind of check in with all of you and see how you're doing on this assignment. All right, good luck, 7th graders. See you soon.